This is the Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral.com.
Good afternoon, Tuscaloosa, Internet World, West Alabama. How are you doing today on this Tuesday, June 18th? And before we get going, I want to start by saying happy birthday to my youngest sister, Catherine. She has another birthday and another trip around the sun. And with that, we want to say thank you guys for jumping in and joining us on the Joe Gaither Show. You're watching us on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, listening to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on Amazon. You're finding us on BamaCentral.com and on the Bama Central YouTube channel. We appreciate everybody who has jumped in and joined us on their favorite platform, whether it be social media at Joe Gaither 6 or on the podcast platform on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on Amazon. You can always subscribe and rate and review the show on those podcast platforms. We're hopefully going to have a fun little show today. We'll keep it nice and tight, and we're not going to do any extracurriculars on the Walsh Riding Network. We're not talking to Austin Bidwell of Kansas City Royals. We're not talking to any other topics other than Alabama today. And what we're going to do is spend our time talking recruiting as Alabama pulls in another offensive lineman in Jackson Lloyd. And we're going to talk about the Elite 11 camp as Keelon Russell is competing in the Elite 11 finals. And then we're going to say congratulations to J.D. Davison as the Boston Celtics brought home the 18th championship in franchise history, and J.D. Davison became the very first Nate Oates era player to win an NBA championship. Let's start with that, why don't we? As J.D., I mean, you think back to all the players that Nate Oates has already put into the NBA. We're talking about Keon Ellis, talking about Jaden Shackelford, talking about Brandon Miller, talking about Noah Clowney. You got a lot of guys in the NBA, but J.D. Davison becomes the first player to win an NBA championship as the Boston Celtics brought home a title last night. How many games did he play in for the Celtics this year? 8 games for the Celtics this year. 8 games for the Celtics. He averaged 5 minutes in those 8 games, scoring 2 points, right at 42% from behind the three-point line. But he was obviously very, very instrumental to the main Celtics this past season, playing in 28 of their games, 35 minutes a game, almost 21 points a game. So he's growing and developing in the G League for the Boston Celtics, got himself into 8 games with the big boy roster, and he earns himself an NBA championship last night. So congratulations to J.D. Davison, as Nate Oates was in the house. You saw a lot of online commentary that maybe Nate Oates was looking to schedule the Boston Celtics or the Dallas Mavericks for next year's non-conference schedule. And while that's not possible, I wouldn't put it past Nate Oates if it were possible. Very cool to see Nate Oates in the house last night celebrating J.D. Davison and his team winning the NBA championship. Congratulations to all the Boston Celtics fans. I know I have a few friends who support the Boston Celtics. I'm not really a huge NBA fan of any franchise. I was pulling for the Dallas Mavericks to pull the upset just for the underdog factor, but it seemed like it was destiny for the Boston Celtics. And so congratulations to J.D. Davison winning an NBA championship ring, and nice to see Nate Oates celebrating that with his player. Interesting enough, not really sure the connection, but Brandon Miller found himself in the Boston Celtics locker room last night after the win. So he was an ancillary part of the celebration last night as well. With that, we'll put the basketball to bed until the NBA draft comes around. We'll talk about that more with Matt Guzman from Spurs Central at a later date. But let's talk about quarterbacks. Let's talk about quarterbacks, then we'll talk about offensive line, and we'll get out of here for the day on a Tuesday. We're going to talk about Keelon Russell. Keelon Russell gets going in the Elite 11 finals today out there in Los Angeles, California, and I think this is a very big opportunity for Keelon Russell, and I think it's going to tell us a lot about who the new Alabama quarterback commit is. Keelon Russell becomes the 12th player, well, really 11th player. You kind of got to ask yourself if you're going to count Tyler Buckner as one of these players. But the 12th player with Alabama ties to compete in the Elite 11 finals. You go to the Elite 11 website, it looks like they got started in 2004, and you see the first Alabama players kind of popping up around the Nick Saban era. Star Jackson in 2007, A.J. McCarron in 2008, Phillip Sims in 2009, Philip Ely in 2010, Blake Barnett in 2014, Tua Tagovailoa in 2016, Talia Tagovailoa in 2018, Bryce Young in 2019, Tyler Buckner in 2020. If you want to count him, I'm counting him on my list because he did play at the Capstone for one season, Ty Simpson in 2021, and Julian Sayin in 2023. Of those 11, three of them took home the victory as the winner of Elite 11. Blake Barnett, Tua Tagovailoa, and Julian Sayin. And while the jury is definitely out on Julian Sayin's career after he's transferred to Ohio State, and we wish him very, very well as he joined us at one time on the Joe Gaither Show last summer. We wish him well up there at Ohio State. You look at the three winners, and I would say, okay, it's not really an indication on how well or how poorly a quarterback is going to do once they get to Alabama. Really, as you get through this list, other than A.J. McCarron, Tua Tagovailoa, and Bryce Young, you've had a lot of, I don't want to say busts. That's too harsh. That's too mean. But a lot of guys who haven't worked out here at Alabama. Ty Simpson still obviously has a chance to work out here at Alabama, playing the backup role behind Jalen Milroe. And we talked a lot about Jalen Milroe yesterday, as he is, the fifth favorite to win the Heisman Trophy, according to some of the gambling sites online. But I do think it's a big week for Keelon Russell. It's a 3-day competition. He gets to put himself in the fire. You look at some of the 24/7 sports rankings of quarterbacks, and he is the 7th, 6th quarterback in the country, according to these experts, and 4 of the top 5 ahead of him are competing in this. Well, really, 3 of the top 5 ahead of him are competing this week in Los Angeles. Julian Lewis is out there, the quarterback from Carrollton, who's committed to USC and might be flipping to Auburn. If you're reading some of the message boards, Tavion St. Clair is out there competing, and he's committed to Ohio State. Matt Zollers is out there competing, and he's committed to Missouri. The number 1 quarterback in the class, Bryce Underwood, is not out there, committed to LSU. And George McIntyre, the number 4 quarterback in the class, was supposed to be out there, committed to Tennessee, but he's not competing due to injury. So he's out there, Keelon Russell. He's out there with Julian Lewis, Tavion St. Clair, Matt Zollers, just right off the top of the deck. And then right behind him in recruiting rankings, he is Hussein Longstreet, who's committed to Texas A&M. He's out there. Deuce Knight, who's committed to Notre Dame. He's out there. Akili Smith, who's committed to Oregon. He's out there as well. You skip a spot and you go into KJ Lacey. He's out there. The quarterback from Saraland High School, committed to Texas. Ryan Montgomery, Georgia's quarterback commit, is out there. So you've got a lot of high-profile quarterbacks that are out there. Kevin Sperry, the Oklahoma quarterback. Kamario Taylor is committed to Mississippi State. You see TJ Lateef is committed to Nebraska. It's a loaded class. Ty Hawkins is committed to TCU, and Bryce Baker is committed to North Carolina. It's going to be a chance for Keelon Russell to really show his skills in close proximity to other quarterbacks. We talked about it yesterday when we were talking about London Simmons, the Alabama's newest defensive line commit. He's a 3-star prospect out of Flowood, Mississippi, and people just see the surface level 3-star and they think, oh, he's no good or he's not going to be any good. And we made the point yesterday that I feel like sometimes it's very, very challenging to rank and to correctly evaluate so many high school recruits when you've got, so many guys competing look at just Alabama alone, from 1A to 7A. You've got hundreds of schools, and obviously, the better players stand out. The better players end up going to some of these elite camps and going to these events, and that's how they get ranked by rivals in 24/7 and on 3. And obviously, it goes a little bit deeper than that. You got some of these recruiting services who are pulling up film and really doing the work on these guys, but with so many prospects, I think it's very, very difficult to really make it an exact science. And it's an inexact science. We'll say that. And so when you're looking at these quarterbacks specifically, and that's who we're talking about right now, Keelon Russell, as he stacks up with the rest of the class, I think this is a great opportunity for these evaluators to really fine tune what they've already thought or how they've already obviously you look at 24/7 and you see these guys ranked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and all the way down, right? But this is a chance to put them side by side to say, okay, with all things being equal, who's better than who? What stands out about these certain prospects? And so, look, does it matter if Keelon Russell gets his 5th star? No, not at all. It doesn't change his status here at Alabama. It's not going to change whether the Alabama fans are more or less excited about him. And it's not going to change the way that Kalen DeBoer feels about him. Period. He's got a scholarship. He's committed. He's in the fold. And obviously, Keelon DeBoer has evaluated him to a place that says, oh, that guy can play in my system, or we can use that guy. But I do think that, it gives the fans something to talk about. And so for him to, what is he on 24/7? He is the 6th best quarterback. He's rated as the number 38 overall prospect in the country. Matt Zollers, the 5th best quarterback, is still a 4-star. And so you've only got 4 5-star quarterbacks in Bryce Underwood, Julian Lewis, Tavion St. Clair, and George McIntyre. But I think this is a real chance for Keelon Russell to show that he is in that class with Julian Lewis and Tavion St. Clair. He's a 2-time state champion at 6A at Texas. Obviously, his weight looks like it might be a little bit of an issue at 6'3", 175 pounds. But I think this is a great opportunity for him to be put under pressure, for him to be put under the microscope, for him to learn. I mean, basically, that's the most baseline beauty of this week is he gets to learn from a lot of coaches at one time. Oh, here's your mechanic tweaks there. Oh, let's look at the whiteboard and see how you think and develop the way that you see the game. And then he gets to pick the brains of the other quarterbacks in the class. And so I think that any time that you can be in an environment where iron is sharpening iron, it's going to be a positive. Keelon Russell, we don't know if he's going to be in the A.J. McCarron, Tua Tagovailoa, and Bryce Young class, or if he's going to transfer out. You look at the list of the 11 quarterbacks that I've already mentioned, 7 of them transferred out of Alabama before really making an impact. And you think about Julian Lewis Julian Sayin, and you don't blame him, obviously, with the coaching change that happened in the springtime. But Julian Sayin didn't even really get to his freshman year. He played through the December, the bowl prep, and then basically was transferring out by the time Kalen DeBoer got into place. So you look at these guys. I mean, Star Jackson transferred out, never really saw the field. Phillip Sims and A.J. McCarron, they definitely battled, but Phillip Sims transferred out, and he's at NC State and Virginia, I believe. Then Philip Ely transfers out. Blake Barnett, he was on the field for Alabama for 2-3 series before Jalen Hurts took his job. Obviously, Tua Tagovailoa sat and marinated behind Jalen Hurts for a year, and then basically took over. Tua Tagovailoa, garbage time just a little bit before transferring out to Maryland. Bryce Young, obviously, Heisman Trophy. And if you've ever heard me talk about Bryce Young, I do think that he's the best quarterback I have ever seen at the college age with my own 2 eyes. And granted, we got to take into account my own age at 34 years old, but Bryce Young was an absolute wizard here at Alabama. And so I think, but Bryce Young did not win Elite 11. So whatever happens this week, it's not going to be an end-all, be-all indicator on what kind of quarterback Keelon Russell will be. Tyler Buchner obviously came to Alabama as a transfer, but he was there in 2020 competing in the Elite 11 finals, did not win. And obviously he's transferred back to Notre Dame. Ty Simpson, a lot of people have very, very favorable feelings about Ty Simpson, and I do as well. I think that he is marinating as a quarterback to be for Alabama once Jalen Milroe moves on to probably will be the NFL after this season. I think Ty Simpson's sitting right there ready to tear it on up and ready to lead Alabama in the future. But we don't know. We don't know. He hasn't won the starting job, and so we really don't know. In 2021, he was out there at Elite 11 as well and reportedly did well. So you look at the you look at the list and you think, okay, 11 quarterbacks have been out there. 7 have transferred out of Alabama. Only 3 of these guys won Elite 11. What does it really mean? I don't think that it means a whole lot of on what a quarterback will or won't be, but I do think it serves as a great opportunity for the quarterback to evaluate himself, for Keelon Russell to evaluate himself against the other prospects in the class. And I think that it will give the evaluators a much better look at some of these quarterbacks as they currently stand. How many guys are on this list? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. 20 guys are on the list, and you got to scratch George McIntyre. So 19 participants will be out there, and he will be graded, Keelon Russell, through the 3 days. He's going to be graded today. I believe the first day is all mechanics and really whiteboard work and mechanics. Oh, how quickly is his release? Where's his release point? His arm velocity, his accuracy against air, and then they'll start to bring in other players, defenses. So it's going to look like a 7-on-7 tomorrow. And then I think on the 3rd day, they make it really, really live, ramping up the pressure, putting you in 2-minute drill situations and trying to see if you can get your group of guys down the field. And here's the other aspect. These receivers, a lot of these receivers, there's not going to be any chemistry. So you got to develop the chemistry with these receivers very, very quickly at Elite 11 finals. So we'll be paying attention to Elite 11 over the week, and we'll see how Keelon Russell does. I think that he's going to do fairly well. I think that what we saw on film when we pulled up his huddle film, what was that, 3 weeks ago? He committed on June 5th, right? So the June 5th, 6th, or 7th show, we put on his film and we talked about what we saw out of Keelon Russell. And I think that he's a guy that has accuracy. He's got a quick release. Now, I do think the weight is going to be a little bit of an issue. We want to see him put on more weight between now and really January, when he likely is going to enroll here at Alabama. And obviously, if he's done it for 2 years in Texas 6A high school football, again, we love the high school football here in Alabama, and Georgia and Florida obviously get a lot of love. So does California. But 6A high school football in Texas is on par with as good a league as you can get. And so my man has led Duncanville. Now, granted, he's been playing with a lot of good players at Duncanville. That's a very high-level program. But he's led the Duncanville program to 2 straight state championships as a sophomore and a junior. And so I think that without speaking to him, without knowing him, the mental makeup seems to be very, very strong for Keelon Russell. And so I'm very excited and anticipating what he will do, what we will see, and what we will hear out of the Elite 11 camp. Let's keep going on recruiting, and we're going to pop up some film here. So if you're watching us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, we're going to pop it up right like that. There we go. If you're listening to us, I'll do my best to describe it. But we are looking at Jackson Lloyd. Jackson Lloyd becomes Alabama's 3rd offensive line commit of the 2025 class. He's out of Carmel High School in Carmel, California, listed at 6'7", 290 pounds by our friends at 24/7 Sports. He's considered a 4-star offensive lineman, and my man's is basically playing all left tackle for Carmel. And look at this guy. He has got a lot of power. He's got a lot of athleticism. He plays basketball and baseball as well. We see him just totally collapse the defensive line. Now here he is playing on the right side, playing right tackle. They move him out. He's leading and basically shoving the defender all the way down the line. Back on the left side, let's see. Well, are we in pass pro? Yeah, pass protection. A little bit of leak. Oh, he's got ability to get out on the move. I think that this is an offensive lineman that looks a little bit like Mal Waldrop. Oh, here he is catching a pass on a tackle release. Is he going to throw it? Oh, he's just running the football. So obviously he's a great athlete out there at Carmel, and this is going to be a really, really fun prospect to watch. At 6'7", 290 pounds, you read that he's got 84-inch wingspan. He's averaging 15 points a game playing in the post for Carmel High School, and apparently he is a dynamic baseball player as well. And this is just another really strong get on the offensive line for Alabama. He looks a little bit like Mal Waldrop, but he looks a little bigger, and he looks like he's got a bit more athleticism than Mal Waldrop, and that's what we liked about Mal Waldrop. We liked his technicality out of Central Phoenix City, but this guy is impressive as all get out. Look at him just playing this tackle position, mirroring the defensive end, and okay, he's keeping his quarterback clean in this clip. I think that Alabama's offensive line class is about to be really, really special. We heard from experts that when Kalen DeBoer and his staff basically came to Alabama, that Jackson Lloyd was going to be one of the big priorities. And it seems like everybody that this staff has prioritized has ultimately come through and committed to the Crimson Tide. You've got 17 commits in the class now. And yes, you're still ranked with the number 3 overall recruiting class. You're behind Ohio State and Notre Dame. You're just barely behind Notre Dame if you're looking at the composite score. I believe Notre Dame's at 264 and Alabama's at 260. So one more commit could see Alabama bump into the number 2 overall class. And what is it? The rumors of my demise are greatly exaggerated. That's the line that comes into my mind. Everybody, Nick Saban's retired. Alabama's going to fall off. Well, Alabama didn't go out and hire some random guy to coach the football program. They only hired, look, we've talked about it at length already on this show about the resources that Kalen DeBoer and his staff have at Alabama that they have never really had. They didn't have at Washington, and that's no disrespect to the Washington program, but Alabama is just, a step above about everything that Kalen DeBoer has ever had. So we're watching Jackson Lloyd, and we're watching his pass protection and his run blocking. He looks like a powerful SOB, really clearing the lane on the left side of the line for Carmel, and he looks like a future tackle. There was a little bit of talk, it was, in my opinion, about whether Mal Waldrop would be an offensive guard, would bump in and play offensive guard or not. But this guy, Jackson Lloyd, looks like a tackle. And so it's very exciting to see the Alabama offensive line class come together. You now have Jackson Lloyd, you have Mal Waldrop, and you have Michael Carroll. All 3 guys are, Mal Waldrop, obviously a 3-star, so he's not rated as high, but Michael Carroll is considered one of the best players in the state of Pennsylvania. And while you look at the 24/7 rankings of Jackson Lloyd, and they have him as one of the 19th best tackle in the country and 17th overall player in California. Well, On3 doesn't agree. On3 Sports has him as the 6th best tackle in the country and the number 1 player in the state of California. So that's where you're going to get some disparity with these recruiting services, and that's why I think that it's so hard to really get a consensus feel on some of these guys. You see, even right there, he's playing defensive line. So this guy's got a lot of ability and athleticism. You read some of his profiles and you hear about his competitiveness and his motor, and it really shows on film. He's looking like he is imposing his will every single time, every single snap. And obviously, these are highlight tapes that we're seeing thanks to our friends at huddle.com. But my man's is a real load and looks like an impact player out there at Carmel, and that seems like it's going to be very, very exciting for Alabama to get. I'm excited about this offensive line class. I'm excited about the class as a whole. I know that some people have really bagged on Alabama for the number of 3-star prospects that you've brought in. Mal Waldrop and London Simmons being recently coming to mind. But I think that when you talk about Kalen DeBoer, that's another aspect. When you bring in Kalen DeBoer, he's used to maybe recruiting at Washington and Fresno State and Indiana the players that are lesser, not lesser known, but aren't as popular on the recruiting services. And so when you do that, you recruit 3-stars and you have to evaluate prospects. One thing that Nick Saban was always well renowned for was his ability to evaluate prospects. And, people always talked about the Bama bump. And a lot of that, I think, was due to Nick Saban. Oh, we see you at camp. We see you at summer camp. And I don't care what the recruiting services say. You meet our own measurables and you impressed us as a staff. Look, I think Kalen DeBoer, it falls right into that. Oh, I've been at Washington. And we don't have as much access. Fresno State, we don't have as much access to the five-star prospect. Indiana, all the five stars in our area are going to Ohio State and Michigan. So we've got to make do with recruiting the lesser known, the less popular athlete, and we've got to hit on our recruits. His success at Indiana, at Fresno State, and at Washington basically shows me that that the Alabama fan should be trusting Keelon DeBoer and his ability to evaluate prospects, no matter what 24/7 on 3 Sports, Rivals, or ESPN has to say about those guys. And that's no disparity or really disrespect to those recruiting services. I think it's impossible. I think it's impossible to see every single quarterback in the country or every single tackle in the country and really give a fair evaluation of everyone. Obviously, the best players pop off the page and the best players pop off film, but I think that there's a lot of room for players to fall through the cracks. You see that each and every year, and you see that in the NFL draft. You see that in the NFL with, 5 stars, the percentage of 5 stars converted to first-round draft picks is not as high, or it wasn't as high at other places as it was at Alabama under Nick Saban. And I think that Keelon DeBoer is the type to, I don't really care what the recruiting services say. These guys catch my eye. I mean, Jackson Lloyd only got his 4th star this past off season, and On 3 Sports has seen him rise and rise and rise all the way to the top player in the state of California. Now, obviously, there's some disagreement between the recruiting services, but I think I'm going to trust the coaching staff who has fielded a national championship roster last year at Washington. And he comes into Alabama and has the more resources than he's ever had, and the recruiting steam is really, really picking up around the Alabama Crimson Tide program. There's going to be one more weekend of official visits, and it's going to be another big weekend. You're getting guys like Luke Metz in, who we've had on the program. Luke Metz is committed to Alabama, and he's going to be helping to recruit this weekend. But I would anticipate another weekend yielding 1 to 3 commitments. You're at 17. You got only space for 7, 8, 9, 10 more. And so the spaces are going fast. And I think Alabama is really, really excited, or should be really, really excited about how the very first recruiting class under Keelon DeBoer is shaping up. We're going to watch Keelon Russell all 3 days at Elite 11. We'll hopefully have something written up for you on BamaCentral.com on what he does. I expect him to perform well. Will he win the thing? It's hard to say with the 19 quarterbacks out there. I'll say no, just for the sake of safety, just for the numbers' sake. I think when you're taking one guy against the other 18, it's going to be very, very difficult to win the competition over 3 days. I think that's why people were so excited about Julian Saying. Getting Alabama's first winner since Tua Tagovailoa in 2016. It was just unfortunate the way it worked out with Julian Saying transferring to Ohio State after Nick Saban's retirement. But you understand, he wanted to go be with a familiar staff, and Ohio State ended up as his second school, so it just made perfect sense for him to hit that portal at that time, and we wish him all the best. It'll be exciting if Keelon Russell wins it. Oh, man, I think people will really, really have to eat a little bit of crow, especially considering people that the anti-Alabama fan talking about, you flipped a quarterback who was committed to SMU, blah, blah, blah. SMU is no good. You're right. SMU is not Alabama. And, yes, SMU is moving into the ACC, but it's not Alabama, and it's not the SEC. I think this will be a big weekend for Keelon Russell to prove himself, or week to prove himself as one of the nation's elite prospects. I think what people just saw, 6'3", 175 committed to SMU, you're no good. I think this week out there in Los Angeles is going to be a big opportunity for him to maybe silence a little bit of the detractors. And with that, I think Alabama is going to continue to recruit very, very well. Everybody who said that Nick Saban, since he's gone, Alabama's recruiting is going to fall off. They only came here to play for Nick Saban. Sure, there's definitely an element of recruits that came here to play for Nick Saban. Why wouldn't it be? He's the greatest college football coach of the modern era. Of course, there are people who are coming to compete and play for Nick Saban. But Alabama is a pretty dang good brand as well. And so you didn't replace Nick Saban with a bum. You didn't replace Nick Saban with a guy like me who has no college coaching experience. You replaced Nick Saban with a guy who was in the national championship game last season and has done more with less throughout his entire time in college coaching. And so I think it's very, very exciting to see what Kalen DeBoer has done, the way that he's been able to leverage the Alabama brand on the recruiting trail and really be successful so far. 17 commits. You look at the other, you look at Ohio State and you look at Notre Dame, and obviously Ohio State does stand out with the number one class in the country. They have 3 5-star recruits of their 16 commits. So yeah, they've got a little bit more prestige in their class right now. Notre Dame with 21 overall commits, 0 5-stars. They got 12 4-stars and 9 3-stars. Alabama with 12 4-stars and 3 3-stars. You've got a lot of room that you can make up on the Fighting Irish. I don't know if Ohio State's going to be caught for the number one overall class, but I do think that Alabama definitely has room to move into that number 2 spot. Georgia's sitting there at 4, and you look at the Auburn Tigers sitting there at 6. Auburn's been making a lot of waves on the recruiting trail, particularly in recruiting the state of Alabama, and that is something to note, and you do give them credit for doing that. You never thought, look, Hugh Freeze was always going to get the ball rolling there at Auburn. It's just going to be a matter of whether he's able to keep his head on straight, and now that NIL is legal, I think that's going to be very, very beneficial for Auburn if they continue to just kind of let him cook and let him do his thing. But for Alabama, they're in great position. You've now got 3 offensive line recruits. You're going to see if you can't get Ty Haywood into the class. I think that would be the next big commit for Alabama. Ty Haywood, let me scroll to my offensive lineman here. Offensive tackle. Ty Haywood, is considered basically your first or second best tackle in the class out of Denton, Texas. 6'5", 285 pounds, and I think that would be the next big get for Alabama, a 5-star prospect. And you've seen a little bit of online flirtation between Keelon Russell's family and Ty Haywood. I think they would love to get one of the top 2 tackles in the class and really, really solidify this offensive line class for Alabama. So we're going to cut it off right here today at 30-some minutes. And we appreciate everybody joining us. We want to go back and say thank you and happy birthday to my youngest sister, Catherine. I hope you have a great, great day and another great year around the sun. We want to say congratulations again to J.D. Davison, becoming the very first player in the NATO's era to win an NBA championship, as he was up there with the Boston Celtics last night. We'll keep watching Keelon Russell at Elite 11, and we'll update you on his progress as we go through the week right here on the Joe Gaither Show on Bama Central and BamaCentral.com. As always, you watched us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. You listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on Amazon. The Joe Gaither Show right there on Bama Central and BamaCentral.com.
Thanks for joining us on today's edition of the Joe Gaither Show on Bama Central. Keep up with Joe on all his social media pages at Joe Gaither6. Subscribe, rate, and review the show on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and be sure to read us daily at BamaCentral.com.